Hey John, how's it going?
Good. Again, it's good to meet you.
Good
And
meeting you as well.
yeah, Brandon and I are really appreciative of you taking time to talk with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And so basically, I just want to give you a little bit of background, and then we're going to dive in and talk about this recent purchase you made.
Sounds good.
So I think the most important thing, or the most important things to understand, is we're at the beginning of a research process. We're going to meet with you and a handful of other people to talk about a recent experience, a recent purchase experience they had. And this is by design, casual. And, we're going to do a lot more kind of like super complex stuff down the road, but we're really just going to have a conversation with you. I don't have a list of questions. There are no right or wrong answers. What we're really trying to understand is a story, which is the story around your experience purchasing this item. You can change your answers at any point. If you say something and then you realize, oh my God, like I remembered something different, that's totally cool.
So anything I say can and won't be held against me.
Exactly. It could, but it will not be held against you. So,
but won't be held against me. Okay, yeah, there we go.
if you say something, you realize later, wait a minute, the timing was different, or that I was in a different place, or I was in a different store, whatever the case may be, just let us know. And I guess the final thing I would say is, like, we're really just trying to create like a documentary of your experience buying this item.
Got it. Okay.
And so what you might find is like in a documentary, we might zoom forward in time, and then we might go back in time, and then we might zoom in or zoom out. And sometimes we'll get really detailed. And sometimes may be more general. But it's just all a matter of really trying to understand your experience.
Got it. Okay.
So we discussed, we'll finish up by the top of the hour. That still work for you?
Yeah, sounds great.
Great. And actually, we already mentioned that we were going to record this conversation, and you're cool with that, and the recording's in process.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, cool. All right, great. Well, so my understanding is you recently bought a guitar.
That's correct.
All right. So could you tell me approximately when you bought it, and tell me a little bit about it?
I think I bought it about 2 weeks ago to the day now.
Okay.
So yeah, been having a blast with it. I used to own a guitar many years ago, and well, that was before I moved to Canada for university. That was about 9 years ago now. Between then and now, my parents have moved around. I've lent out my guitar to a buddy who hasn't returned it since. I'm not quite sure where it is. Don't hold it against him, but didn't have all that much time in the last few years to really get on that horse, or so to speak. But yeah, I definitely do find myself having a bit more time now, and I, did something over the last few weeks that rekindled my interest in it. So I thought, I'm just gonna go out and get myself a guitar, and that way I'll be more motivated to, practice and learn, having made a purchase that actually affected my wallet, my pocket. So here we are.
Copy that. Got it. Tell me about the guitar.
Oh, it's an acoustic guitar. It's from Fender. It's all black. I got it from a store called Long and McQuaid. That's about 20 minutes north from where I live, in Toronto itself. Pretty accessible by transit, actually. So it was a breeze getting there and coming back. And all in all, I was pretty happy with the purchase. I enjoyed what I saw. I played a couple of guitars at the store. In fact, this was a different guitar from the one that I was eyeing based on my shopping experience online. But when I did go to the store and I tried out a few of the other instruments, this one definitely caught my ear. And even though it was a little bit pricier than what I eventually hoped for, I had no regrets paying that amount due to the deal I was offered, and B, the superior sound quality.
Got it. I like that. Caught my ear. By the way, Brandon may jump in at any point with additional questions or additional direction as we move along here. I just want to make sure that you're aware of that as well.
By all means, please, Brandon, jump in.
Yeah, so actually one quick
go ahead,
question
Brandon.
I had there. So you said this was a bit different than what you saw online. What were you hoping for when you went into the store?
I was hoping. So what caught my eye online was an Epiphone guitar that was in wine red. I mean, I read reviews on it and the sound quality and you know, when you're buying something nowadays, I think you do your fair share of research. You know, YouTube videos and reviews and the likes of, and I seemed all but sold on this one guitar that I thought both looked good and sounded good. But when I went to the store and I tried out a few different instruments that the clerk over there recommended me, I definitely found a difference in sound quality. And even though it didn't look as good as the previous one, I guess when you're buying an instrument, you're going to be buying it for how it sounds and not how it looks. So yeah, that's what I meant when I said that it was different from what I initially hoped to purchase when I went into the store.
Cool. So yeah, like let's stay there for a moment. So it sounds like you bought the guitar 2 weeks ago.
That's correct.
Where did you buy it at the same? I think you mentioned the name of the store. Did you buy it at the same store?
That's correct.
How do you spell the name of that?
Long and McQuade, like McQuade.
Got it.
Pretty famous store. They have a few branches all across Canada. A few of them two of them in Toronto, I believe, a couple in Mississauga and the neighboring areas. But yeah, if you were to punch that into Google or something, I'm sure it'll pop up.
Got it. And when did you go to the store and walk out with the guitar? Were you at the store a bunch of times?
No, I just went in and walked out. Like I said, I did my research online. I went in thinking I was going to get this particular guitar, but over there, having interacted with a few of the other instruments firsthand in person, I was slightly swayed by away from my initial decision. So yeah, I went in, I walked out. It was just a one-off experience. I did not have multiple trips to the store.
Got it. So it's like literally you only walked into the store that one time.
That's correct.
And you had I don't want to put words in your mouth, but before going there, you had looked at YouTube videos.
That's correct.
Online reviews.
That's correct.
Do you remember where? Was it like Reddit?
Definitely Reddit was a component. There are quite a few websites out there that compare guitars and have reviews on them from professionals, amateurs, and the likes of, talking about a lot of different things, ranging all the way from ease of playability to the actual sound quality and the durability of it, and how things last. I mean, how things sound a week, a year, a month from now. You know, a lot of reviews warning you about things to do, things not to do, humidity levels and the likes of. So I thought I found myself around a fair amount of information before going in and making such a purchase.
Copy that. Got it. Were there any particular review websites or sources that were more important to you than others? Like,
I can't quite put a weightage on my sources, but like I said, Reddit, there were a few Reddit reviews. There's an extensive community on Reddit, as you're all aware. YouTube had a few good reviews. It was better because, you know, you could actually hear the instrument instead of just someone typing everything out and then you imagining what it might have sounded like. So I guess maybe I gave a bit more weightage to the YouTube videos or any other videos that I came across, because they were not only able to convey what the review was from a personal perspective, but also like how it sounded and like how it felt, and maybe a few other intangible things that you can't express through words.
Got it. Yeah. So the videos got those other aspects.
Yeah, for sure.
Got it. Well, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So you walked into the store about Long and McQuade about 2 weeks ago. It sounds like you had in your mind you were going to buy this wine red guitar. You'd done how many hours of research had you done?
I wouldn't say too much, but if I were to put a number on it, cumulatively maybe like 3, 4, I would say. Like, obviously it wasn't all in one contiguous block. But like if I were to tally up everything, maybe 3, 4 hours, I would say, over the course of maybe a week to 10 days prior to it.
Okay.
So when you walked in this store there, I just want to ask one question about the guitar. So you mentioned the Epiphone wine red, I think, guitar. That's the one you had
That's correct.
envisioned. Did you have any others that you were considering? Like, did you have a list or any kind of other potential options?
There were a few. I think at the end, but I went into the store after I trimmed down my list, after I
Okay.
decided that, I think this is the one I want to go. Because I also went in during work hours when I had 2 hours. It was a meeting heavy day and I had 2 hours in between. And I really just wanted to go in and come out ASAP because I wasn't going to get much work done anyway during those 2 hours. So yeah, my intention was to walk in and walk out as soon as possible. Obviously, things transpired slightly differently, but to answer your question, I can't remember what other options there were because I kind of shortlisted it down to this one final contender before going in. I also had a budget, so as you know, the best instruments are also very expensive. So that definitely limited my options to what I was looking for from an actual purchasability perspective. But yeah, like I said, there were a couple other options. None of them really stood out as much as the Epiphone that I mentioned earlier, but it all took a turn for a different tide when I went into the store.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. But first, so what was your budget?
I was prepared to shell out anywhere between like up to $300, $350.
Okay.
So that was my budget. Yeah.
And did that change at all? Or when did you set that budget?
I initially started looking at purchasing a guitar for purposes of learning. Because like I said, I used to play it many, many years ago, lost touch with it for a good, more than half a decade sort of thing. And then initially I was looking at purchasing one secondhand, just because I wanted to learn something. But then, like I mentioned, I thought I'd probably be more motivated to learn it better and be more diligent at it if I shelled some money on it. Additionally, having owned an instrument before, I understand the value of having a good quality instrument. You need something that lasts you for a while, and cutting corners at the very beginning is not going to be a very fruitful experience down the line. I've heard experiences of people who get faulty equipment that they can't quite vet when they're buying it secondhand. That hampers their learning experience because you get demoralized or demotivated when things don't sound the way they're supposed to, when things become more difficult for you on account of poor design or wear and tear that the product may have accumulated. Taking all those things into consideration, I thought it was best that I bought a product that I knew would have some sort of quality guarantee on it, which is why I chose to outright buy it. And I'm sorry, does that answer your question? I feel like I went on a slight tangent over there.
No, you're great. It's super helpful.
Right.
So you're walking in. Oh, by the way, how far is work from Long and McQuaid?
And it's as far as home from Long and McQuaid. I work from home.
Okay, so how far is that?
20 minutes. It's about a 30-minute transit commute.
Okay.
About like a 15-minute drive if you were to drive there.
Got it. So you gave yourself a little bit more than an hour to.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Got it. So you walk into Long and McQuaid a couple weeks ago. You have in mind this wine red Epiphone guitar, and you mentioned that you've kind of have in mind it's sound quality over time, ease of playability. You have a budget in mind, and just this notion that you got to spend a little bit of money to find quality, right? To have a quality instrument. Yeah. So, so there's actually quite a lot there. So, but why don't we? So what happened? So you've done all this. You've spent 4 hours doing research. You have a plan in mind. You're kind of taking precious time out of the day. You've got this guitar in mind, and you ended up leaving with a black Fender. So what happened?
Like I mentioned, I was on a bit of a budget. So what I narrowed down my top contender to was pretty heavily influenced by that. I did end up spending a bit more than I initially was hoping to when I walked into the store. But the reason I was okay with that was, like I mentioned earlier, for two reasons. I got a good deal, and B, it just sounded better from what I was initially eyeing. Like I said, at the store, I was privy to a few different instruments, and I could play them out, see how they sounded, see how they felt, the balance, and just so many other things that you get a feel for by being there in person, tangible things. So additionally, the deal that I got was I got the guitar along with the hard shell case for about $45 more than what I'd initially hoped to spend. A hard shell case for a guitar usually goes anywhere between $60 to $200, I would think, depending on the quality, depending on how fancy it is, the amenities, the features. So having a hard shell case along with the purchase of the guitar for an additional $45 or so seemed like a good deal to me, because with the other guitar, I'd just be walking out of the store just with the guitar in hand, like I probably have to get a gig bag for myself, which might cost another $15, $20. But that's not going to be all that. It's not going to be all that protective. Additionally, there's a humidity seal on this case. So that's something that I read up online as one of the root cause killers for guitars in the long run, just instruments in the long run to begin with. Actually, wooden instruments, they go through wear and tear, especially in Canada, where things are extremely dry indoors, especially during the winter season when you have the heating running. So all those things considered, I felt that it was okay spending a little bit more than what I walked in hoping to do so, just because a hard shell case by itself would have cost me a lot more. And like I mentioned, I transited my way over there. I can't imagine it's all that safe just carrying a guitar in hand all the way home. So
oh yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, so one note you mentioned, so you had a lot of great details there about Canadian weather and wanting to protect your guitar and everything. You mentioned when you're in the store and you got a good deal, you got a better feel for the guitar, you said it sounded better. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, when it comes to buying an instrument, I guess the whole reason you're buying an instrument is to play it. And when you play it, you're playing it for the sound of it. So certain things just sound better than certain other things. I think you can make that comparison with singers, for example. I'm sure you have a singer who you rank higher than the other. Why do you do that? It's pretty much the same thing, right? I felt that this guitar that I bought over here sounded a bit more fuller, had a bit more depth to it. Those are the two things that I really noticed different. I mean, they're tuned the same, so the notes are the same. I also noticed it just felt a little cozier. I can't really put a name on it or a number on it. Maybe that last bit is just me, hyping it up for no good reason. But like at the end of the day, like I said, it sounded better, and by which I mean it sounded deeper and it sounded fuller, and that's as good of a description as I can give.
Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. And when you were playing it, was there a moment where you picked it up and you said, okay, this is a guitar for me, or did you try the other one and when you got to it, was it not your expectation?
At the store, I narrowed it down to 3 choices again, based on what the clerk had provided me with, based on my budget and what I'm looking to do with everything. And then, I went back and forth with those 3 for a while before, really understanding what I wanted out of the instrument and what I thought would be best suited for me. So it took maybe about 10 to 15 minutes of deliberation before finally deciding on what I have right now.
Were the 3 guitars the wine red Epiphone, if I'm saying that correctly?
So they actually didn't have that color, but it was the same device. Yes. One of them was the Epiphone. The other one was this Fender that I played. And the other one was, I can't quite remember what the brand name was. I'll get back to you if it comes around.
Yeah, perfect. That's fine. Were you disappointed that they didn't have the red?
A little bit, yeah. But like at the end of the day, I knew that I was buying an instrument to see to experience how it sounded and not how it looked. So that wasn't all that much of a deal breaker. A little bit. I'd be lying if I said, when you walk into a store hoping to buy something, you hope that it's available. But it wasn't a deal breaker, because I think you should buy it on the basis of sound.
Did you call the store in advance to see like if they had it, or does this store just have a huge stock, so you assume they would?
So I actually checked online before I went in, and
Okay.
obviously they have inventory online, and they did say that they had stock in that particular store. So I'm not sure if their online inventory is kept as up to date as it should be. Perhaps it wasn't. The person at the store did tell me that if I did want that particular device, then they'd have to order it in from, I'm gonna say it was Peterborough or something, another store essentially, and that it would arrive in a day or two, which again was not a deal breaker. But like I said, I just got sold by the sound, or the superior sound, by what I have right now.
Got it. And was the third guitar sound wise a contender? Like, so what was
Oh,
the
yeah.
what was the process, right? Like when did it become clearer in your mind where you were leaning?
Again, it goes back to the sound. I just remember the third guitar was also an Epiphone. It was a
Okay.
different model, however.
Okay.
Looked very similar. There were a few differences that the man mentioned over there that I can't quite, remember, because very technical, very minor differences that is not all that obvious to the layman. But when it came to me trying them out, this one felt deeper, fuller. The strings, the neck and the fretboard and everything, just it seemed. How do I say this? One of the reviews I got on the Epiphone online was that the fretboard, the separations between them are sometimes a little too sharp, and that's not all that great for a beginner. So going to the store and running my hand across the neck, I could feel what they meant. Obviously, it wasn't gonna pierce my skin in half or anything. It's not by nowhere close to that sharp, but those are the subtle differences that you can't quite make out via pictures or videos that you get a feel for when you go in person and try it out. So minor differences like that. This seemed a bit more rounded on the edges, seemed to have a bit more of a comfortable feeling. The strings seemed a little bit more raised from the neck than what it was on the Epiphone, meaning that again, the sound got fuller and it was easier to transition between frets on the neck. So yeah, a lot of very tangible things that only become apparent to you when you experience it in person and have a feel for it. But at the end of the day, I have to keep coming back to the sound. I think nothing trumps the sound more than anything else did. Having a slightly sharp fretboard is not going to be a real problem, especially when you develop calluses. I think that's the reason you have them. But it has to come down to the sound at the end of the day, and that's what it did.
Got it. I think you mentioned before, did you mention before that the Fender was cozier?
Yeah, but I also mentioned that that might just be me romanticizing it.
And when you say that, but what did you have in mind? Like the way it, what did you have in mind when you said that, understanding you may be romanticizing it in retrospect?
Like I mentioned, these few minor details, like the sharpness of the fretboard, how the strings are slightly higher up than the other one, made for an easier transition between frets, moving up the neck, moving up and down the neck.
Yeah.
All that led to a more of a cozier feel. That's really all I can say with regards to that statement. But again, big disclaimer, could be romanticizing it.
No worries. So how much was the Fender, I guess, before the case?
Before the case?
Yeah. Or how much was it with the case? I think you said that the case was an extra $45.
That's right. So it was
from its list price.
Yeah, so that was, I think, about 200, I'm going to say 290, okay. I think it was. Yeah, the other one was like 245 or something.
Okay.
So for $45 extra, I was getting a very good guitar case along with it, which I thought was a fair deal, also considering that it sounded better. So yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned it was a good deal on the guitar. So how much was the list price, and what was the sale?
Like the listing on their website for this particular brand did not actually have it advertised that it was coming with a hard shell case. So like I mentioned, 245 versus 290. The difference being it sounds better and you get a hard shell case, which I thought was a good deal, because in my research prior to going into the store, I also looked up like, a gig bag and like a hard shell case and how much it would cost and what other equipment I might need to either, spice it up or for maintenance or anything of that sort. And I found that a hard shell case would be anywhere in the range between $60 to $200, depending on the brand and the make and the amenities and all that. So, so all those things considered, I thought it was a good deal.
Did you know how much cases cost before you went in, or?
Yes.
So you had a sense for what a good deal it was, and how did you even walk me through, was this kind of like a used car salesman kind of thing? Hey, if you buy this guitar, I'll throw in, this case, or how did that transpire?
So that's actually a very good question. I'm not actually sure why, because there was another color on a very similar looking guitar. It was like a midnight blue color that I was initially thinking of getting, but the salesman said that this hard shell case only comes with this black colored guitar, which I wasn't quite able to wrap my mind around at the moment. But then all of their guitars on the wall are actually tagged with all their tags actually have what comes with it, like all the technical specifications along with the price, along with whatever it comes with. And as advertised, this was with the hard shell case, and it's just this particular brand and this particular make, even though the other guitar is the same major model, but I think it's a slightly different minor model. But again, a layman like myself who wasn't able to tell too much of a difference between the two, that was not advertised with the hard shell case. So I was like, sure, I'm not buying it for how it looks. It sounds great. I'll take it.
So sorry, so is the one without the case just a different color, or was it a different color and a slightly different model?
So it was a different color, and I guess it was technically a slightly different model. I think I have the DC something, and that was the CR something. I'm not entirely sure. I could be making up the letters, but it looked the same. It sounded the same to my ear, at least. And yeah, I thought they were the same until the salesman pointed out that they're actually different models and they're advertised differently as well.
Got it. So technically they're different models, but for all intents and purposes, they were quite similar to the user. Got it.
Correct.
So Brandon, do you have any other questions? I was going to kind of switch gears a little bit, but do you have any other questions?
Yeah, maybe just one more about the interaction with the sales rep there. So did they try to sway you at all? When did you come in and tell them, hey, I want to buy this, or walk me through your experience a bit with the salesperson?
So I walked into the store, went over to the guitar section. I was just eyeing a few things on the wall. At the time, I was alone. It was just me in that big room. A few minutes later, a man walked in and asked if he could help me with anything, to which I said, yeah, of course you can. I'm looking to buy a guitar. And so this is my background. I used to own one many years ago, and I'm a bit of an amateur at it, and I'm trying to get back on it. So I'm trying to learn, and I want a device. I want an instrument that I can call my own, that I can learn. And then he asked me, so what's your budget looking like? And do you have any preferences? Are you looking for an acoustic, guitar, a classical, a bass? Because all those are offerings in the store. I told him that, yeah, I'm looking to pick up an acoustic guitar. I gave him my budget, which was around about the $250, $300 mark. After which he recommended a few different models, which I shortened down to 3, which then I further shortened down to the one I purchased.
And did you shorten down to, had you researched previously all 3 that you sampled in the store?
I had researched just the one that I'd researched all 3 in passing. Yes.
Yeah.
I'd extensively researched the one that I was hoping to go and buy. I had not extensively researched the one that I ended up buying.
Got it. Cool. Oh, I have one other question. Did the different brands, to your recollection, play any kind of role in your decision, or were you brand agnostic, just really seeing through the brands, focusing on the reviews, focusing on the videos, focusing on the playing experience?
That's a very interesting question that you ask. And I'm saying that because, like I alluded to earlier, I did have a guitar many years ago, and since then it got lost in the move. Lent it out to a friend, yada yada. That was a Fender. So I guess you could say there is some sort of soft spot that I do have for the brand. Uh, Even taking that out of the equation, and I can't stress this enough, my decision was based on how it sounded. It could have been any brand. I'm not loyal to a Fender, but when I guess the brand strengthened or reinforced itself in my head when I compared a few different guitars in the price range that I was looking for, and I realized that the best sounding one of the three was a Fender. So I guess you could say now I'm a bit softer towards it. At the time, it was a pleasant surprise that what I was hoping to get was also a Fender based on my previous ties to it. But for the most part, I'd like to think I am pretty brand agnostic. It's about the service or the product that's offered. Anyone can do as good a job as they want.
Got it. Got it. And so do you feel like some of this was going on in your head at the time, or is this more of you kind of thinking now, like, oh, it's kind of cool that I got another Fender? Like,
I think it's like very, very much more retrospective. At the moment, I had no bias towards getting the same brand or a different brand.
Okay.
It was just about the look and the sound and the feel.
Yeah.
So definitely a more retrospective thing.
Okay. So let's like switch gears. Tell me about the first moment when you kind of just were home, presumably, and you played. Just what was that like? Yeah, what was that like?
I was very rusty. It had definitely been a while, and it showed. I realized that now that I had the equipment, now that I had the instrument, I had to work out a formal learning pattern or learning plan so that I progressively get better at it, that I don't abandon it, that I don't let it just pick up dust or anything. It was a good feeling to play it. It was a good feeling to own it because it was something that I was contemplating over the last 7 to 10 days before purchasing it. And even before then, I've had, I've thought about this many a times in passing over the last few years, just never got around to it. I don't drive, so it's not all that easy for me to access places, especially in a city as big as Toronto. That leads to a bit of a bias towards, going out of my way to get something as well. But yeah, like I said, over the last 7-10 days, I just, I was feeling it, and I went ahead and got it done.
Yeah.
And I did play it afterwards. It felt nice to own something that I'd been eyeing for a few days, few weeks. It felt good to make a plan, to commit to it and get better at it, hopefully. And yeah, it felt good that I also got a better deal than what I was expecting. Because had I bought the other guitar and then bought the hard shell case by myself, I would have spent a bit more, and it would have not sounded as well either. So,
and when you got home, did it sound as good at home as it did at the store?
you bet it did.
Okay. And it sounds like it's important to you to be getting better.
Yes.
You also commented that by putting out like some cash, that you felt like this might keep you more accountable. And so have you kind of written out a learning plan or scheduled time in your calendar, or what did you have in mind when you mentioned a learning plan?
So like I said, it's been about, I think, exactly 2 weeks to the day since I got it.
Yeah.
Tried to play it at least 30 minutes, no upper bound, at least a lower bound of 30 minutes a day. Yeah. And in doing so, I researched as well as brought out some of my old finger picking exercises, chord transitions, finger movements, a lot of technical musical stuff that I picked up over the years / continuing to pick up by means of online tutorials and the likes of. So committed to at least 30 minutes of playtime per day. Hopefully that increases in time over the coming weeks and months and years, whatnot. But yeah, I'd like to think I've been diligent on that front, at least for now.
Cool. Awesome. So Brandon, I'm gonna like move us kind of jump into our time machine. But do you have any questions for Vid about the, kind of the space we're in right now?
No, I think you're okay to move. Are you moving back in time a bit, or?
Yeah. So I think what we'd love to hear of it is like, so all right. So you owned a guitar before university?
That's correct.
And you loaned it to someone.
That's
and
correct.
Lost track of them.
No, I didn't lose track of them. I just lost track of the actual device. I'm still in contact with the person.
Okay. So they still have your guitar, presumably, but
it's
felt
somewhere.
awkward, or it sounds like it became a gift.
Pretty much, yeah, because I grew up in Dubai. Since then, he's moved out, I've moved out.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually now in the States, and the guitar I don't even know where it is, but it's not in the same country that I gave it to him in. So that much I know for a fact. And it's just not accessible, and a plane ticket to get it and come back would be way more costlier than a new guitar in itself. So sure. Here we are.
Got it. Sorry. And so did you give it away? I may have just mentioned this, but did you give it away about 8 years ago?
I think I gave it away about 7 years ago. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I lost access to it 9 years ago.
Okay.
But then it used to just sit at my house back in Dubai. I gave it away 7 years ago when I was visiting, and he was around for a few months, and he's like, "Can I borrow it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be able to take this back anyway, because I'm not carrying a guitar in my cabin baggage or anything. By all means, have it."
You stopped using it around 9 years ago because you left Dubai, and then after a couple of years, you gave it to him when you were in Dubai. And then at some point, that this person went to the States. You're now in Canada. God knows where the guitar is.
That's exactly it.
So when did you have like the first thought that I need a guitar? Like, I need a guitar again?
Like I said, I've been having on and off thoughts for a long time.
Yep.
What really triggered this was a few weeks ago, we put together a video for one of our friends, wishing him a happy birthday. Okay. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the TikTok trend of singing sea shanties. It's something that our friend was really into, and we made sort of a birthday greeting in the tune of a sea shanty with all of us harmonizing and the likes of. Turns out we have a pretty talented group of people in our friend group, so kudos to them. In doing so, I went to the same store 3-4 weeks prior to my guitar purchase to rent out a violin. I used to play the violin as well. My instrument broke about 5-6 years ago, owing to a lot of the problems that I briefly alluded to, humidity and the likes of just wear and tear. Strings popped, the bridge broke. It's not fixable by my own understanding. As part of the sea shanty, there is a dude playing a violin in it, and I didn't have one then. So I went into the store to rent out a violin, which I still have. Going there, I realized, wow, that's a lot of guitars. Fast forward a few weeks after playing around with the violin and having rekindled that connection, and I'm like, damn, okay, so I still got it over here. Maybe I should get a guitar and, rekindle that lost bit as well. And so yeah, fast forward a few weeks, here we are. So I guess to answer your question, that's when I first knew that I wanted to commit to this right now, having tiptoed on that fence for a good few years prior to it.
Got it. So you had been to the store before.
Oh, I thought it was, yeah. I've been to the store a few times in my lifetime, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, but you'd been to the store 2 weeks, roughly, a week or 2 weeks before you bought the guitar.
A month
before you bought the guitar. Yeah. And when were you at the store before then? Weeks, months, years?
Years ago, it was to rent a speaker system a very long time ago. Um, wasn't even instrument related, but it's the same store.
Okay, got it. And you just observed. So you were in the store. You have a broken violin at home or a
That's correct.
dysfunctional violin at home.
Well, I have two now because one's a
Okay,
rental. But yes, I own a dysfunctional violin and I've rented out a functional one.
got it. And got it. And when you went to the store, you saw I guess, dozens of guitars.
Yeah.
Did you check them out? Did you ask any questions?
Not at the time, no, because I went in to rent out a violin. I actually went in to buy a violin, but then I
Okay.
thought maybe a rental, which was a pretty affordable option, was a good first start because I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to commit to buying it just yet.
Yeah.
So I rented one out, and no, I did not check out any guitars or anything. Then, in fact, I barely had even an idea that I'd be coming back to the store about a month later to buy one. Like I said, over the course of the next few weeks, I just sort of rekindled some lost connections with music that led me on this path towards, getting back on that horse, so to speak.
Got it. So just so I can understand, so hey, like let's do this happy birthday video for our buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Vid, you can play the violin, or can you play the violin?
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
So you get the violin,
Yeah.
and how did the TikTok sea shanty video go?
Oh, it turned out great.
Yeah.
I share it with you, but it's a private video on YouTube that only my roommate has access to. But it turned out great. Like I said, I was surprised by the amount of talented people we have in our squad.
Yeah.
Not to mention the talent that went into editing and compiling and everything as well, apart from the actual musical performances. So all things considered, yeah, it was great. Definitely rekindled my interest in everything music related. Over the last few years, 5 years of university, I think Brandon can attest to the fact that we barely had any time on our hands for hobbies or anything. Since then, it's been about 3 years since we graduated and we've been working full time. Definitely had a bit more free time on my hands, although nothing really inspired me as much as of this event that we're talking about right now that essentially put me on this path towards the purchase that, well, put me on the path towards this conversation with you.
Were there any other activities that that you considered instead of buying the guitar and spending what you said is like 30 minutes a day? Anything kind of competing with that in your thought process, like, oh, I'm gonna whatever,
I'm not sure what your question is over here.
So in your own mind,
was
there anything that you were was there anything else, like when you were thinking about getting the guitar, and you were also not just buying guitar, because you also said you were really anticipating spending time relearning, right, your skills?
Yes.
So was there anything in your own mind sort of like, oh, like, well, instead of that, I could join a soccer club. Instead of that, I could watch more Netflix videos. And instead of that, I could do more work. Like, was there anything like was there any friction that was in your mind?
No, not really. It was actually the way I approached it is I thought it was a good release from what I do for my day job and everything else. So I'm a software engineer. I spend about a good chunk of my day, about a third to a half of my day, looking at a screen, typing out stuff. Quite obviously, that can get pretty taxing on you mentally and physically. I also work on side projects from time to time, so that's even more screen time and typing beyond the 8 hours a day that I commit towards my day job. So all that, considering all that, you need some sort of a release to sort of get your creative juices flowing again, to, avoid that sort of mental fatigue. Two great options that I've stuck by with all my life: sports and music. At the moment, I'm not clear to play sports. I recently had a shoulder surgery, meaning that I'm not allowed to play contact sports just yet. And it's too cold to play any non-contact sport outside right now, like tennis or something. So that led to music being the other option as a good release or reprieve from from everyday life. So the guitar was a very good segue into that. In fact, the violin was a great segue into the segue, which is now the guitar. So yeah, like it wasn't really any sort of competing emotion or competing activity at the time. It was more of an activity that I thought would complement my daily routine and my daily cycle. Like I said, when you're playing a guitar, you're not really staring at a screen. You're staring at your fretboard, or you're staring at your notes or something along the lines of. So it's your headspace is completely different from when you're trying to, you know, create a new feature in an application or fix that bug that someone's having an issue with or something along those lines. So the idea was to just have a different headspace, so as to, you know, give myself a mental break, which is exactly what I thought would happen. And like I said, sports and music have been my two go-to things pretty much all my life. So here we are.
Why didn't you rent a guitar?
I owned one before, so I thought I should own one again. You're gonna ask me why didn't I buy a violin now? I know it.
Well, did you consider renting? You rented the violin. I'm wondering if you considered renting the guitar.
I didn't actually even consider it.
Nope.
Because again, like I said, I wanted to commit to learning something. I could have rented it technically, you're right, but it was just the headspace that I was in at the time. You know, I've already rented out a violin. I'm not going to just keep renting out equipment. I mean, I can afford the guitar, you know. I think it's a good investment. I thought it was a good purchase at the time. And like I said, when I first went in, I was going in to buy a violin, but like I thought that was too much of a purchase at the time because the violin that I wanted was also like $600+. And obviously the guitar was not $600+. So budgetary constraints also played a factor in me renting versus outright buying the equipment.
Okay, great. So maybe you can walk us through, you mentioned there's about a month in between the video and 2 weeks ago when you went back to the store. So can you walk us through, like, so what were the steps that led you from one point to the other? What was the kind of snowball that grew to saying, I got 2 hours, you know, when I don't need to be at work today, I'm going to the store? So
I'm not sure if it came off that way, but the 2-hour window that I chose to go was not on a whim. It was carefully planned out. It was a Wednesday. Wednesdays usually meeting heavy. Went between the hours of 12 and 2. I usually take lunch between 12 and 1. So I thought I can afford to take that additional 1 hour off in the name of this. Because like I said, a lot of meetings, meaning context switching between work and being on a call. You're not all that productive anyway. So I'd actually planned this out 3 days prior to that I would go in during this time slot. Because the store also closes at 6 p.m. I usually get done work at around 5:15, 5:30. If I were to go to the store after I finish work, they're probably going to have their door shut. So I had to go during the day. So I planned it out about 3 days in advance that, you know, I have this block over here that I'm not going to be very productive in. And it's also during my lunch hour. So I'm just going to do that. So yeah, I didn't just walk out that day. I planned that about 3 days in advance.
Got it. Makes sense. And so, yeah, like go back in time a little bit more. So you got this violin, you cut this video. And so like, what happened over those next couple of weeks up until the point when you said, you know what, next Wednesday I can, I'm going to go to Long and McQuaid, right? Like what was going on in your mind? Like, so you started doing research, you started looking at YouTube videos. Can you just add a little bit of, you know, what was sort of the timeline? And, you know, at what point did you say, I'm going?
So like I mentioned, we made the video
Yeah.
and that meant I had to dust off some cobwebs on the violin and
Yeah.
play it well enough to be recorded and edited in and all that. Uh, and like I mentioned, this was a whole squad of people that put together said video. So we had a person on the ukulele, we had a person on the electric guitar, we had a person on the acoustic guitar, we had me on the violin, we had about 5 other people on the vocals. So in getting this done together, obviously we collaborated a lot. And while collaborating, obviously a lot of my friends were pretty curious as to, a violin is not something that's as ubiquitous as maybe a guitar is when it comes to the number of people who play it. So a few of them were curious as to, how you play it. So I was giving them basic tutorials and the likes of. And like I said, we were recording our parts individually, so we were helping each other out. And the parts that were being played on the acoustic guitar seemed simple enough based on my basic knowledge of what I knew. So I tried playing it, and obviously I wasn't as good because I wasn't as fast as how my more experienced friends were playing it, but I was able to do it. I just needed more time. I just needed more practice. It felt like, it felt like riding a bike, I'm still able to go along slowly, but then you put me along with competitors and I'm probably just going to fall by their sheer presence around me. So I thought maybe, yeah, I definitely feel like I have it in me to get back to the level I was at before. And in fact, even surpass the level that I was at before. But in order to do that, I need an instrument. How do I get an instrument? I either buy it or, like you said, I rent it. I chose the former.
Got it. So how long was the video creation process? Do you guys work on that like over the course of like a week or so or longer?
Took about 2 weeks.
Okay.
From start to finish. So yeah, that's about it. Took about 2 weeks.
And did you start doing the research crossing over with that period or after it concluded on the guitar?
Oh, after it fully concluded, because I had my hands full. I had 2 weeks essentially to relearn or re-remember the things that I'd learned many years ago. Yeah. And get good enough to record something that I'd be confident enough putting anywhere. So yeah, for those 2 weeks, it was just all hands on deck on the violin. After that, I tried playing it on my roommate's guitar. I tried playing the same part on my roommate's guitar. It felt like there was some unfinished business over there. So I thought maybe it's a good time to relearn it.
Sorry. So your roommate, you have a roommate?
Yes, I have 3. And
one of them was part of the group
creating video? Yes, all of them were.
So there's someone with an acoustic guitar at your home?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, got it. And so you just mentioned that you, at least once, maybe multiple times, goofed around a little bit on your buddy's guitar.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Was it just the once or was it several times?
Like I said, I've been contemplating this over the few years, getting a guitar. I just never acted on it. My roommate, who's been my roommate for 3 years and running, he's always had an acoustic guitar. And I've played on his guitar a few times here and there, never really acted on it. But this whole the whole series of events leading with me relearning the violin enough to play it, playing a guitar along with a few of my friends to try and understand how to do that.
Yep.
Like I said, they were doing it. It looked simple enough. I was able to do it, just nowhere near as good as how some of the others were. I thought maybe, there's some unfinished business over there. And then after we finished filming the video, I switched my attention to the guitar, tried playing it again. I realized this would be a lot easier if I had my own instrument instead of having to borrow my roommate's, like whenever I wanted to. And what if he's playing it or something? Plus, there's always, there's a warm feeling when you own something and it's yours and you have like full access to it without having to depend on anyone else. And I thought that, this is a decision that I've been putting off. I've been so on the fence, on and off about whether or not I should make the purchase or not. So I thought now's as good a time as ever, just rented a violin, might as well buy a guitar.
Got it. So the video ended, you play the part you learned for the violin on the guitar. As you said, you kind of felt like you still had it, some unfinished business. And at
Mhm.
that point, you began to do your research,
Yes,
reading the reviews,
that's correct.
finding something that caught your ear.
Mhm.
And then it sounds like after about roughly a week or so, week and a half or so, you had your candidate in mind, saw
Mhm.
this, that you could have this free, kind of make this time in your schedule, like your very busy day, but kind of figure out how to get to the
Mhm.
store. And that's kind of the end of the story.
Pretty much, yeah, in a nutshell.
Okay. We're at the end of our time. Brandon, do you have any questions? Maybe Vid would be generous enough to stay on another minute.
I have
Yeah,
no.
if you have, yeah, if you have another minute or two, just
Sure,
some quick
man.
question. So going back a little bit. So you mentioned you had on and off thoughts a long time, like several years, even before the events of
Mhm.
your TikTok video and all that filming. And you mentioned you're working a lot of long hours on the screen, and you have kind of two things that you do to deal with stress and your mental kind of break is sports and music.
Mhm.
So was yeah, when you say on and off for a long time, and you had that shoulder injury, after the shoulder injury happened, were you considering music a little bit more, or was there something else that was going on when that happened?
No, not at the moment, because well, when I had the surgery, I was in a cast for about 4 weeks, and about 12 weeks after that, I still didn't have enough mobility in my hand to either grasp a violin or, you
Yeah.
know, play a guitar or something. It's only recently that I've regained most of my mobility. It's still not 100%, but it's for all intents and purposes, I think it's pretty good. So no, not really. Not at the time. I didn't really view it as, now I'm grounded by this recovery process. I should take up something. In fact, I did what you're saying in a different way by working on a side project when I had a lot more free time on my hand. So that's how I channeled it then. But no, music was not really a point of focus at that point in time.
Okay. And so you said you had side projects as well. So did you kind of try the side projects and then figure that you were having too much screen time, or how did you kind of get away from the screens and figure that you need to do something else?
Well, that has to be all of it, I think, attributed to that impromptu video that we put together. Like I said,
Okay.
it
Yeah.
it, it really rekindled my interest in music, especially having to do something you haven't really having to play the violin, something I haven't done for many a years at
Yeah.
such short notice, like in the span of about 2 weeks, meant that I had to really, A, get a device, B, get back to terms with it, and C, learn that piece that I have to play enough to play it well. So in those 2 weeks, really, I think my perspective on, like, music changed, I guess. I've always enjoyed music. I'm not someone who's like, only podcasts or anything. I love all forms of music. And like I said, I used to play a few instruments in the past as well. Kind of lost touch with it, moving abroad, hectic university schedule. And then just over 5 years, you kind of, you lose touch with it. You don't think of it as much anymore. You
Right.
don't know what you're missing out until you get your hands back on it, and you're like, oh, it's kind of like sugar, like when you quit cold turkey, that's the only way to do it. Because and when you have sugar after not having had sugar for so long, you're like, wow, this is so good, I should really have more sugar. Except in this case, sugar is music.
Super.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can totally relate to just rekindling the old musician hands once you get
Yeah,
that feel for it.
pretty much.
It's pretty exciting to do.
Cool. You good, Brandon?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good. I'm just thinking, let me just check if I had anything else in my notes here. One last quick thing.
Sure, what's up?
So in your typical day, I guess, just going even further back, before these events, when you're like in the middle of the pandemic and you're coding, you're mentioning, you had side projects as something you were looking for in your free time. Were you like actively looking for for things to do outside of work? Was there something that led up to that, or anything that started your journey to do those projects?
No, not really. I try to keep productive. 5 years of university, you're always kept
Yeah.
productive with your coursework and your assignments and all that. With a full-time job, it's a bit easier to fall into a rut when,
Right.
you dedicate all your time and resources towards the betterment of your company, but you're
Okay.
not really spending all that time or resources towards the betterment of yourself. So I try to keep busy. I try to put in some effort that would, benefit me more as an individual, be it
Right.
by means of a side project to learn something new that I don't have the opportunity to do at work, or be it playing sports to make my physical fitness go up, or just
Yeah.
have a mental reprieve, or in this case that we're talking about right now, music to essentially get a different set of creative juices flowing and have a different form of release after a good day's worth of work.
Okay, and that makes sense as to why you were saying you wanted to have like a learning plan and in place, like when you got your new guitar and you
Yeah,
have like a schedule for things you're working towards.
exactly. Yeah. So that
Yeah.
goes towards hitting two things I mentioned. One of them being the
Yeah.
fact that you make a commitment and you want to follow through. And the second thing being that you try to keep busy, you try to improve yourself with whatever opportunity you get.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Cool. Well, thank you, Brandon. Or thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Vid. Thank you both.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm gonna just pause the recording too. And yeah, again, thank you very much.